Oh, you know, oh, I'm so tired. In my opinion, I actually honestly thought Man United were going to win the league this season. I also thought I also put what a fiver on Hillary Clinton to win the election, thinking that while there are reasons to vote against Hillary Clinton, on average Hillary Clinton would edge out Donald Trump, but only just. I thought it'd be only just. We're talking like 5% differential out here, right? And all these opinions I had, while I was, while I'm no expert pundit or serious, at least fully serious, fully realized serious political pundit. I go punditry in the way you see sports games. There's a story to it, and then these are people's jobs, and people have adversaries and whatnot. And it is a game of sorts. It is a competition. You know, I am no guaranteed expert in this, but I feel given the parameters and the information I had available, and given current trends, I felt that these predictions were viable. However, there are people in this world who, did predict, even if it was kind of a hopeful guess, that Chelsea would be leading the table or winning. And people that did predict Donald Trump were going to win just out of hope, as opposed to those who predicted because they saw this idea of change, of course. But anyway, enough of the election. Everyone on YouTube's talked about the election. What I'm getting at is this saying that, what is it? If someone guesses the future correctly, they have luck. If someone predicts the future incorrectly, they still have legitimacy. Now, luck versus legitimacy, legitimacy is very important, but there is the case of that lucky person who has guessed correctly. Why am I getting at this? Obviously, titled this video, obviously, this idea of, anytime someone makes any talk about serious things or wants to talk about things in depth or talks about things they feel deeply about or wants to really approach, they're liable to. There's a liability for other persons to have this sense of, oh, all of a sudden people have become experts in this field. Like, election happens and all of a sudden people become politicians, or, a football result happens and all of a sudden people become, expert pundits or, seasoned managers. These kind of things. Or, J. Cole releases an album that will put me to sleep tomorrow, and even showing that opinion that, all of a sudden I obviously think and believe truly that I am some, world-class musical critic, of course. I'm just, I'm going to get to the point that this is problematic. In my opinion, in my non-expert opinion, this is problematic in the sense, especially when you talk about things in culture that do affect and do enthrall all of us. I feel it's very important to be able to engage with things, and be able to talk and not feel like it's. Often people say this saying, like, oh, all of a sudden everyone's an expert. Often people say this saying in the sense of like, arguing the illegitimacy of what people have to say. It's this idea of like, even if there's something insightful for someone to say, it's like all of a sudden everyone's a politician, instead of seeing the world in this way of, oh, everyone should be involved in things like politics or culture, or if you care about football, share your opinion. But I think too often people, this comes from this idea that too often people are tired of being talked down to, or tired of people claiming to be experts, or too tired of people who say, or at least have this sense of pride about what they have to say, and the sense of pride manifests itself in quite bad ways, often quite toxic ways. Often leads to people who don't agree with those, so-called experts being labelled as, idiots or fascists or whatever negative word there is out there to throw at a person who doesn't agree with you. Whether it be misogynist or Blairite scum, for example. But I think the biggest problem is when we live in a society where people are so disengaged with certain things, especially when it comes to things like politics and society-based things. I mean, football, okay, cool. But even then, that they don't feel like they can talk, or anytime someone does talk, it's, someone's showing their, pompous, quote-unquote expert opinion, It's kind of part of the reason why I did this on the phone, like trying to spread this message that I think it's important, especially in the age in which anyone in the world, like I can just share their thoughts and their views and everything. We should take this opportunity not for granted, but take it, with both hands, both hands. And really try and share. And through this way, we actually get a good concept of what the normal person thinks and feels about anything. How does the average person or the average student in this area of town or average area of town feel about this issue or feel about this thing in culture? Like boring hip hop albums. I mean, J. Cole jokes aside, I think it's very important for people to keep sharing things, especially in the age where we're so unable to be able to share our thoughts and feelings. Even if there isn't a lot of deepness to it, at least we get an idea of what people are thinking, and we can talk and debunk it instead of just debunking it just because it comes from someone who's a non-expert. This goes into my next point of, I can't remember that quote, I think Michael Gove said it. People are tired of hearing experts, which shows yet again this idea of people are tired of feeling that people are talking down to them, which is probably part of the same ethos, I guess, that makes people say things like, oh, all of a sudden everyone's an expert. Because, people are prone to talk down to people. Like I mentioned, you throw a label out for people that don't agree with your views. It's quite interesting how, like, that was quite a poignant saying. People are tired of experts. And it seemed like there was a slight higher amount of, quote-unquote experts, at least quote-unquote experts, who would side with staying in the EU, at least for the time being, people were saying. And then that people said that was part of the catalyst for the some people who wanted to leave the EU because they were tired of being talked now to by people in Brussels or the political elite, which is why you see things like the rise of alternative groups or alternative sentiments. The alt-right is an easy example I can bring up to mind, for example. That I'll save that for a different video, where I'm going to talk down on people who generalize against people. But, ha ha ha. What was I going to say about that? There's something else I was going to say. So, the other interesting thing is, I started this video with a quote-unquote saying, those who, those who guess a prediction, guess the future correctly, have luck. Those who predict incorrectly still have legitimacy. Now, this is a thing I thought. This is my own thought, or the way I've processed this concept, at least. But I say it as if I will say things like, "Oh, there's this saying that exists in the world, and it exists in the world because I have said it now." But I think it brings on this psychology of if I say this is my sentiment, it seems to carry a different weight, whether it be higher or lower, compared to if it's a saying in the world, like if you say also like an old man saying or like a famous saying, which shows people still do seem to value this idea of an expert, as long as it's not I think You have to be an anonymous expert or be such a well-renowned expert. So, for example, if I say something from, I don't know, quoting from George Orwell, for example, and it's the same sentiment that I may have arrived to even prior to George Orwell. So I would say the similar saying. I'm definitely not the first person to say something on the long lines of what, my saying. It seems to carry more weight because he's a celebrated person, which is quite interesting because in that way he does take this role of being the expert. So George Orwell is the expert in terms of systematic issues of authoritarian governments. It seems, Animal Farm, 1984, for example. So he's allowed to jump over this gap, because it doesn't feel like people are talking down on you because he's already above us. We know that. It's that idea, like standard theistic idea, you could say that, only God can judge me. And in this vicinity, in this idea, George Orwell is the God, or, anyone's the God, or it's like the teacher. It's like in a school situation where if the teacher says you're wrong, you can let it go. But if some of us student says you're wrong, it's like the fuck, these things. But yeah, I was just going on. It's quite interesting. This weird kind of seeing detesting. I can't remember the word. I mean, I've lost the ability to speak English, to be honest. How people seem to not like expert opinions if they happen to come from people who are not defined experts. Is what seems to be the case. And obviously, as a person who is makes a YouTube channel about certain things and social issues, for example, and I'll cover a bunch of things. I am not a defined expert, so of course I do have that slight bias. I'm obviously quite biased to make a video like this, but in the same way I feel it's more of a call to other people to just share their thoughts and views, so we can have like these recorded things, and then I can go through your videos and you can go through my videos and we can say, oh, I have a problem with that, or I agree with that, or these things, or I feel this way about this thing, for example, or I think Liverpool, for example, has a better chance of winning the Premier League because, if Coutinho is fit, he's a wonderful catalyst. Even if he's not fit, Lallana is amazing. Or, I think Russell Westbrook's going to win the MVP because he's going to average a triple-double. Oh my gosh, he's amazing. It's easy to do these things when it's about more casual things or things that don't affect you, like sports or like, other things in culture, like, albums that go double platinum with no features, but I haven't heard the entire album because I keep falling asleep. It's easy to do these things with those things, but when it gets to deep social issues, when you talk about big debates, like the big decisions we've had in this past few years, do we vote to keep the Tories in? Do we vote for Jeremy Corbyn? Who do we vote for in this election? They're both trash. Do we vote for Brexit or no Brexit? What type of Brexit, for example? And all people will complain that all of a sudden we've become political experts. But I think wouldn't it be great if we lived in a world if everyone was actually an expert, or at least attempted to be one, so that eventually people would push each other towards greatness? Perhaps. I mean, what's that quote? I'll leave you another quote from a expert. I can't remember who's the original quote. I should annotate it. But Mandela did make that quote. He quotes someone else, this woman, I think from the 1920s. I think her name is Martha Williamson. He said, what's it? It's not that you are, what's it? It's not that, our greatest fear is that not that we are inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure. Something along the lines of, your playing small doesn't serve the world. And I'm just trying to get at that sentiment, like playing small, or I feel when people say something like, all of a sudden someone's an expert, everyone's an expert, kind of plays to that idea of playing small, or at least it doesn't have a complete open door to playing as big as possible, so that we can be shut down appropriately if we do make mistakes, or congratulated on arriving on something despite not being an expert. But yeah, your playing small doesn't serve the world, and I feel everyone should share, no matter how unprofessional it is, no matter how casual it is, if it's on a selfie on a phone, or if you want to make a serious video and have set up a little studio, but show your views and express them, and then we can refine them and we can talk about them, I think that's the most important thing, Yeah.